Hey everyone, Meet Kevin here. Welcome back to another episode of the Meet Kevin Show. Today we have social arbitrage investor, dumb money TV expert, and someone who's got a lot of experience with both California politics and business and Texas business and politics. This is like the culmination of literally my life right now, investing in California and Texas politics. I am so excited for this interview, and I cannot wait to get started. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome aboard, Chris.
What's up?
Thank you
man?
so much for being here, man. This is so exciting.
Yeah, I'm watching this whole thing you're going through with, the governor, and I moved out of California before it was cool and trendy, dude. It was, gosh, man, it's like 15 years ago when I moved out of California. More than that, even close to 20 years ago. So I
So you
was
started the
bleeding
movement.
edge. I was bleeding edge movement out of California, and I love it, man. I love California. A lot of my family's out there. My buddies are out there. What you're doing, dude, is really important. Like, you're living. If I had the energy and the ambition, I would do what you're doing right now. You're like Mr. Meet Kevin goes to Washington. That's how I kind of see what you're doing. Like, when I saw your video, I was like, dude, you're actually like the modern day Mr. Smith goes to, you're really doing this for the right reasons, dude. That to me says more than anything else. More than anything.
Well, I mean,
don't care what party you're in.
That's amazing. I have to say, I mean, people regularly ask me, like, Kevin, are you sure you want to do this? And like on the inside, I'm like, I just feel compelled. I don't know why. I just have to do it. I'm just so sad at some of the things going on here in California. But I want to ask you, why'd you leave? And what do you think can be fixed out here? What's your reaction to what's going on?
So me and my wife, who's from California, she's from Thousand Oaks. I met her out in LA when I was working out there in the dot-com heyday back in 98, 99, 2000. We were living in one of the better apartments just off of Sunset Boulevard, right by the Ralphs out there, a couple blocks away from the Ralphs. And even back then, we were paying a lot of money, and we had people overturn mattresses on our front yard every single day. There was all kinds of weird stuff happening right in front of our balcony looking down. And we were just at a point when we were visiting my family in Dallas, Texas. I had no intentions to move to Texas. And my California girlfriend at the time was like, what do you think about moving to Texas? She's like, I'm up for a change. Like, we can get the cleanest, most beautiful. The people here are friendly. The place we can buy here is so beautiful and brand new. And she became obsessed with Texas, oddly. It was her decision. But it was, in a lot of ways, some of the same reasons that people are moving today. Like, a lot of our friends were starting to get married, and it was like, I have a home but no dishwasher, and I was like, it'd be a lot easier for us if we went to Texas, like being able to afford a home and the lifestyle that we want to have, and not having to deal with some of the stuff living in Hollywood that we had to deal with, because we're city people. We don't want to be in the deep suburbs. Like, we want to connect to the city, and there was a decision we had to make if we stayed out there, right? Go deep suburbs or live with that.
So that ended up pulling you to Texas. And I mean, it sounds like your girlfriend was sort of dismayed by what she was seeing kind of happening in the neighborhood out in California. And then, I mean, is it that different in Texas, or what's it like out there, or even the business environment?
I mean, first of all, I think there's a lot of Texas versus California kind of like this, right? And I hear it a lot in my friend circles here, because now everyone's moving here, and they're like, keep those Californians out of Texas. I'm like, dude, chill. Like, come on, dude. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I want to read you a quote that I think is so powerful, because people don't realize this. So, the rivalry between Texas and California policy models is made possible by the nation's constitutional structure, of course, which, in the words of former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, allows states to serve as laboratories and try novel and social economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country. And there are so many things that California has done, so many things that have then migrated to the rest of the country and made states like Texas better. Meanwhile, there's things that we're doing here that could migrate to California to make California better, right? I'll just give you one example. I was in California, when California banned smoking in bars, everyone thought every bar was going to go out of business. And I'm a restaurant owner here in Texas, right? So everyone in Texas was like, you can't bring that here. We're all going to go out of business. Well, sure enough, we ended up learning from California. We banned smoking in restaurants and bars, and we all ended up thriving because of it, right? The restaurants and bars ended up thriving because, and we didn't go anywhere. And like, listen, that was one time that, let's say, California maybe got it right, and the rest of us learned from it. And California does so much for the rest of the country. And yeah, we could all learn from each other. You know, right, left, doesn't even matter. We could all learn from these little experiments that we're doing. And when I saw your whatever point plan, like all I
20-point
saw,
plan.
all I saw was like a lot of at-bats with new ideas that are exciting. Obviously, you'll never get all of them done, but they were all great ideas. And I can guarantee you one thing, a lot of those, if you were to get that done as governor, will work. And that's exactly what we need. Like, we need people that are willing to take a little bit of a risk. That's what California's all been about: taking a risk, doing bold things, like saying you're not going to smoke in bar, whatever it happens to be, right?
Yeah.
And some of those things are going to work and make not just California better, but the entire country better. So, like, I'm an optimist. I truly am. But we need people that are willing to step out there and just take those at bats, right?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it just, there's so many things that seem so frustrating about California. For example, this morning I read that Newsom wants to spend about $150,000 per homeless person to see if they can get housing for them. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't spend that much money on remodels and rentals. I found a charity, a nonprofit, that will, for $7,500 labor and material, get people their own home. It's small, but you get a communal bathroom, but you get your own home, your own key, your own window, your own bed, your own, desk and shelves and that. And I'm like, why is the private sector not more involved in fixing California? The government doesn't know how to spend money. They suck at spending money. One of the candidates just spent $5 million on a grizzly bear ad. These people don't know the first thing about money, man.
Well, you got to remember, like, California has some of the smartest people in the country in it, right? Like, in the smartest, like, entrepreneurs and creative people. Like, we have the smartest people and some of the most creative people and the most entrepreneurial people. Like, that's a recipe for success. You just need to be able to bring everyone together. And I hate to say it, like, have a fresh start, fresh ideas. And it's not going to be easy, but it's possible. I absolutely believe in California. Like, it's not only possible, but people don't understand that we need California to be successful. Like, you can't be one of these people here in Texas like, screw California. I'm like, no, it all works together. We need California strong, right? And that's what makes us all strong. And listen, there are some things that you guys can learn from us in Texas. And I think you've already hit on a few of them in like your, how many points is your plan again?
20.
20-point plan. I watched every point, and a couple things stood out to me. You're a real estate guy, right? And you get something, which is, if you figure out a way to let developers do what they do, and they might not do it in the traditional sense, you might not let them do it in LA proper, but if you could figure out pockets in California where you can let developers do what they do. The one thing that I learned being here in Texas, because I'm not a big real estate guy, but basically every one of my friends is, right? So like, everyone here is a real estate guy. Everyone here is a developer. Every single one of them. And one thing that I learned, because I've invested in some of these projects, is you would be blown away at people's willingness to live further, like way further from the city core than you ever would have imagined, in a place that was just nothing. If you allow developers to work their magic in those places, if you make it easy for them, they will build. Like, we have areas in North Texas, they basically took the best things of the city and they took all those restaurants and they now have like hub versions way deep in the suburbs. They built little mini cities out in the middle of the suburbs. And so they are doing things out there that I never thought were possible. Like, I'll drive through like farmland, right? To a place that was nothing but flat. And then all of a sudden they have townhomes and condos in a town center. And it's like you're in a downtown city in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, how did this happen? There's tens of thousands of homes, tens of thousands getting built every year. People that I know that live down here by downtown Dallas, where I live, are like, no, we're moving up there. I'm like, what? Wait, what is going on? And there is a balance. There's a balance, and you just have to think creatively about figuring out where they can build that won't disrupt, right, current policy, right, like you were discussing in your video. But you could do some really magical things by just providing a creative way to build more homes, maybe not have to mess up too much where the existing homes are, right?
Sure.
But that's a different way of thinking.
I mean, what do you say to folks though? Who are like, oh, we don't want more urban sprawl, you know?
Well, like I said, there is a good and a bad way to do it. And like I've honestly seen some of these areas, and we're quite honestly, they can kind of do whatever they want. If you bring in the right developers, they do it in such a way, it's pretty cool. Like honestly, it's pretty cool. Like, and you can't have everything. Everything's a trade-off, obviously. If you want to have just mass amounts of open land going on forever, there's a balance. I'm not saying you do it with all the land out there, but there's a balance, and I think you just need to find that balance and get really creative with it. And I think, there are people that can say, "Oh, it can't be done." There's always a way to figure out a new balance that helps, that's beneficial.
Now, what about? I mean, well, I think to your point, I think this is very much like almost like Vegas, if you think about it. I mean, look, you throw some casinos in a town center, which was one of my parts as well. Is hey, legalize casinos. Put a casino out somewhere in a empty part of California. Build around that in a downtown, and there you go. You got a reason to go there. Do you think casinos could be a good reason to build around these areas, or is that a little touchier?
It's a little touch. I'm not saying it's bad. It just comes with a little controversy. It's probably a stair step, right? And I think if you were to come to some of the areas we have in Texas that quite honestly were nothing but like farmland 8-9 years ago that are now bustling little mini, I don't want to call it's like suburbia cities. Like it's really weird, like Frisco and stuff. Like it's just, I'm kind of blown away about what they've done. You know what they've done? They built stadiums out there. Like the minor league stadium is out there now, right? Like they have like the Cowboys have an area that's like almost an hour from downtown, and it's their practice facility, and they're building neighborhoods and like all kinds of cool things around those areas. So, it doesn't have to be as cool as downtown LA to have little deep suburbia pockets that are all of their own flavor or interesting. Developers, you'd be surprised. They're not all terrible at what they do. And I've seen it done right here. And I'm got to say, I'm pretty impressed and optimistic. And by the way, on that same subject, toll roads. Toll roads is something that we do really well here in Texas. I've seen them work. And they work best where you have optionality. And I think you were discussing having some optionality. Maybe you have a tunnel system, right? And maybe the tunnel system is toll-based. But, you don't have to take the toll-based tunnel system. I think there's always a balance and a trade-off. But I have seen things like toll systems work really well in Texas. We've been pretty aggressive with them. And that's something that, you can learn from that. You can pull that, learning from other states that do it.
You do get some folks who hear tolls and they immediately think, regressive tax, this is just trying to screw over the poor folks again. But I think what you said really nailed it is, well, no, you do it in areas where there are options. If you have the money to pay the toll, go to the private road, the private tunnel or whatever. At least it incentivizes that building and gets stuff done versus nothing done, which actually takes some traffic away from those busier roads. Wouldn't that be the case?
Yeah, exactly. And, we have a new toll road here in Dallas on, it's called, 635. And it's a variable toll system, and it works extraordinarily well. You don't have to take it, but it like bypasses all the congestion. It goes on for like, I don't know, 7 or 8 miles, and you could decide, like it says 35 cents or $3.35, depending on how bad the traffic is at that moment in time. And hey, if you're cool, just, spending an extra 20 minutes to get from point A to point B, you don't take it. If you're in a hurry or you have the financial means to take it, you have optionality. And by doing that, it helps people that aren't paying the toll because it takes congestion off of the free road, right, that you would normally take. I think it's a great, honestly, a compromise system is by having both. And it's worked really well here.
That's incredible. And I haven't heard about a variable toll system. I mean, that makes so much sense. In the rush hour times, charge more. There are more cars on the road, charge more. That seems brilliant. Do you think I was talking to Peter Schiff, who is like super like free market. And I want to hear your thought on this. His argument was you could have private companies build tunnels and you don't even need the cities or the state to supervise them, which seems a little scary, right? His argument is, well, they'll have engineers that'll build it well because they want to get insurance coverage and they want to get in underwritten for the cheapest possible rate. How do you balance this? No government versus some, right?
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that question is always going to be middle of the road pragmatic strategy. It's never about no supervision. It's never about too much. There is a balance, right? There's always a balance. Whenever someone asks me about taxation, it's not about more taxes or less taxes. There's an appropriate amount of taxation, and that fluctuates over time. And it also is about how we're spending the money. So like I would never tell someone I'm pro-tax or anti-tax because it just depends and it's always changing. And how about just an appropriate tax? Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. I think regulation isn't great or bad. Like we got here for a reason, right? There's a reason why we have governments. Governments aren't amazing or terrible. Like it's just part of the natural evolution of society. There are certain things that work better in governments than they do the private market. So there will always be some things where it makes sense for us to collectively say, you know what? It's just too difficult to monitor this completely privately because there's too many incentives for people to kind of screw the system. So we need to have some government oversight, right? Yeah. So it's never either or. It's just finding that balance. And people don't like to hear that because it's not a simple answer. And it's a type of thing where you need kind of an attitude readjustment in terms of, hey guys, we're going to find the right solution for this. And we need to put people in office that aren't one way or the other, but are pragmatic and willing to find that right balance. So I wish I had an easy answer for you. I don't, but it's probably just the right amount of regulation.
No, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think about fixing or shifting schools? I don't know. Is that one of the points that I know you had taken notes on some things. And I wanted to ask you about that. This idea of maybe combining community college and high school a bit, where people have a fork in ninth grade.
This is a topic I'm so passionate about. Like it's just, nice. My kids are 11 years old, and I have 11-year-old twins, boy-girl twins. And when the day they were born, I said, I hope by the time they go off to college, that college looks very different. I hope that we don't have this artificial concept of you must get a traditional 4-year degree. I have a traditional 4-year degree. I hated it. I hated every moment of it. I was working half a dozen jobs and had all kinds of companies on the side all through college. I just feel like it's not the right system. So we need creative thinking. Your whole thinking around future schools is one I haven't heard yet, but I think it's super, super interesting because it provides some optionality. And I think it's really, listen, one of my companies that was a big success that I invested in very early, I was their first investor. I worked there operationally for a few years and we sold it a few years ago to Angie's List, was called Fixed Repair. And fixed repair, our biggest bottleneck was trying to find electricians and plumbers. And like I was so knee deep in that world, it really opened my eyes. And I was like, oh my gosh, but these guys are literally making $130,000 a year. Some of them are making $180,000 a year. And you're telling me that we can't get more people in these positions? And we were actually contemplating and spent many months working on a trade school because we were studying other trade schools, and we're basically working on a trade school specifically to create a funnel of workers for us, because our biggest bottleneck as a tech company in that space was that there was a bottleneck of there's just not enough talent, young talent, getting into that space, even though they can make all that money. I think we need a complete reset of the way. And here's the thing, Kevin, it's about perception more than anything else. This is about perception. What do we need to do to change the perception so that as a kid in high school, it's very cool to think about graduating and being a plumber making $120,000 at age 19, 18, 19. How do we prop up those people to be like, you know why it's cool? Because you're not just going to be a plumber. You're going to be a plumber investor. You're going to be an electrician investor. right? Right? That's why it's cool. And because you're not going to be identified just for your plumbing skills, because you're going to be retired by age 33 or 35 because you're that good of an investor. You know how to manage your money and you're going to be that into it. And like, I really believe that the way that the solving of most of our problems is to bring people into the investor class. Because once you're in the investor class, you really don't care what you do. And this, people think I'm insane to say this, but I've been saying for years, because like, you know, I live in a very wealthy neighborhood. You know, what I've done in the market is pretty public. And I'm out at really fancy parties in my neighborhood with, you know, really amazing parents that are from all walks of life, from all over the world. And I'm like, I think I'd like my son to be a sprinkler repairman when he gets old. And people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm hoping I could help him start a job when he's in high school fixing sprinklers on the side. And by the time he graduates, maybe he won't go to college. Maybe he'll just start up a sprinkler repair business. In my head, I'm like, my kid could be making $200 to $250 a year by the time he's 17. And literally and all through college, like by the time he's out of college, he'll be almost ready to retire the way he'll be investing. Like, that's how I think. I'm like, sprinkler repair. That's what I want my son to be. Like, nobody thinks like that, but we need people thinking not about the profession, but about the financial independence, about taking advantage of opportunity. And I think it all starts with schooling, right? And with kind of how we kind of retrain minds to be like, what are you going for? Are you going for the prestigious college, for the cool job at Goldman Sachs? Or are you going to be in a like when all of your 19 and 20 and 20-year-old friends are trading $5,000 of crypto, you're trading $200,000 of crypto, right? Because you took this path. So like, it's a totally different mindset. And I think your future schools concept, while I didn't totally flush out the idea, there's something there. I think it's cool. It's a good start.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, that's what you just described is so incredible because, I mean, really today, we get taught more about, you know, art history in high school in some cases, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, than we do about building your credit at 18 or the dangers of student debt and how much that's going to sink you because you get out of college with all the student debt. What are you not doing? You're not buying a house. You don't get that home equity line of credit. You can't invest more money because you're buried in debt. And then you think, well, debt is normal. So what do? You buy a fancy new car with more debt. And then you have all these monthly payments. So what are you not doing? You're not investing. You're not learning any of that. What you've described to me sounds like a path of go work, get a job that has a lot of demand in Texas. I mean, you guys need sprinklers galore. Like, that's awesome. I love the analogy there of make money, do it with no debt, no student debt. Go, whether it's buy a home or invest in stocks with your strategy, with any strategy, but get ready to retire early rather than being on this debt path. And I think that is so wonderful. I don't think anybody in high school gets exposed to that idea. Like this plumber investor idea you talked about, so freaking cool, man. That is such a great argument.
Yeah, it's just all about it's about perception. I mean, kids just want to be looked at like they're successful. And right now, getting into a good college is perceived as success, and having a job with a cool company is perceived as success. So if we change what success is perceived as a culture, I think that's how we fix the problem. It's not easy to do, but we need we need people that people look up to be the first ones to step out and say, hey, this is what you should be doing. There's like, we need the Elons of the world. We need those people to say, this is what you should be, how you should be thinking. And by the way, it's different for every single person, of course, right? Like, it's still, the traditional path makes tremendous sense for a lot of people, just not all people, right?
How would you, would you expect that with this sort of future school idea, would you expect companies like Apple, Google, Tesla, SpaceX, or whatever to be interested in really being involved in trying to get that idea to grow? Because, I mean, ultimately they benefit from potentially having more employees that they can really cater to their needs by 18.
Yeah, so my plan, if I were a politician, and I'm not, the one that I've been stewing around in my head for years, was to do away with the 4-year degree for a lot of people. Not everyone, but for a lot of people, because there's still plenty of people to fill those 4-year degrees. But to kind of have, call it a 1 year, kind of a 1 or 2 year type of degree, and then to have people spend the next 2 years in more of a formal, for lack of better words, internship. And we would incentivize all of this country's companies, small, medium, and big, to participate in this program to get kids out of school and to get kids finishing the last 2 years of their school if they're not going to be a doctor, if they're not going to be an attorney, right? If they're not going to be in one of those professions where they need to stay in school, to finish the last half of college inside of a company. And so companies would basically have monstrously big programs to actually not only benefit from having these people at their companies because they get a workforce essentially for free, but they're training people about what types of jobs that company ultimately needs. So it serves a lot of purposes. It serves as a training ground and a recruitment ground for all of this country's companies, but it also just takes a massive amount of investment and a retraining of the way these companies think about how they're going to recruit. And it all of a sudden becomes cool for certain types of people. I would have been one of them at the time to say, I'm not going to go to 4-year, I'm going to do 2-year plus 2. But here's the catch. We have to make it so that companies all stand up and say, you know what? People that graduate in this new style of program, it could be the one that you just referenced as future school, or it could be something like the one I had always thought about, or some blend of the two. We are going to treat that the same as a 4-year degree, meaning that we're not going to bias against it. So when you come to apply for our company, if you're a 2+2 or a future school candidate versus a traditional candidate, we're going to tell you right now that we're going to treat that the same way that we treat potential bias of race, for example, or sex. And we will never bias against that. And we will make sure that we have a balance between people that graduate with those careers versus traditional careers. It's a big thing to get something like that done, but I firmly believe that that's the future. And we have to untie ourselves from the ridiculously expensive in-person 4-year degree. And maybe the first 2 years is remote, right? And because but I think it would take many years for us to figure this system out and to get all the companies involved. But one way or another, whether it's your system or the one I was thinking of, you need help from companies. Like they have to be bought into it, right? But yeah, I think there's something there.
I like what you just mentioned about this. You emphasized whether it's in person or not, and I thought that it's so important because right now when we think of schooling, really it's a teacher giving the same lecture 4 times a day, over and over, year after year. It makes no sense. Well, what we should have, in my opinion, I want to hear your thought, is something where let there be designated lectures that are recorded, like on a teachable style course or whatever. And then, great, you made it to this point. Now come into the class. Let's do the practical applications with the teacher, which is the stuff that you would do in person. You're not going to do it all alone. You're not going to do all your homework alone because you're just going to end up playing World of Warcraft. But at least get through the boring lecture where you're just sitting there watching anyway. Watch a screen. Come on, teachers could be so much more productive. I don't know.
This leads to something really interesting. It's the whole political thing, left versus right. So I think, on one side of the aisle, we have, we want to basically give everyone free education. On the other side of the aisle, it's like, hell no, we're not going to give free education. So, I've been talking to people, and I'm just like sitting in the middle trying to figure out how can we make this work. I've been talking to people on the right side because, there's a few more of those here in Texas than there are on the left side. I'm saying, like, what if the free education was contingent upon us changing and dramatically increasing the efficiency of that education? So it wasn't like you don't have to worry about community colleges ripping off the government by just recruiting people in to get their free money from the government, right? It's more about let's reduce the cost by 75%, give them just as good or better of an education. Let's use this as an opportunity to change the game. And then we'll also fund it. And almost every person I spoke to on the right has told me, yeah, that could be cool. Yeah, that. So it's like, it's not always about spending money or not spending money or entitlements versus non-entitlements. Yeah. I think the right often is more open to spending money if it's done in a way that they think is efficient and productive. So like there's a way to get these things done and to get everybody to agree to them. But we don't even try. Like no one even comes up with the bold ideas. We don't even try.
Good point. What's your version then of making the schools more efficient? Because I like that. I wrote down here, free education contingent on reducing costs, but also making things better. What's the way to do that?
So two things. One, there has to be an online component. It has to be a more robust, efficient online component. There's never been a better time than now. We already have all the seeds planted. We have amazing companies in this space. We've learned so much over the last year. We've learned what's worked, what hasn't worked. Let's put it this way. I always love thinking about this. If you go far enough into the future, 100 years, 300 years, we're still around as a society, there's a 0% probability that all this isn't online, right? It's like it's at a certain point, it's all online. So don't tell me there's not a way to do it. It's just a matter of figuring it out. So it doesn't happen overnight. And so think of it as like, kind of when we had a 10-year plan to get on the moon or whatever. Like, it's a 10-year plan or 15-year plan to go from A to Z. But we're going to get there over 10 or 15 years, and it's going to reduce our costs by this much. The same way that when a company has a restructuring plan, they don't come out overnight and be like, hey, we're reducing our cost by 20% this year. No, they're like, over the next 5 years, we're going to take these steps and reduce our cost. So online is a big part of it. The other big part of it is bringing in private companies, right? We're all in college for one reason. For the most part, we're all in college to gain skills to eventually get a job. If we could bring those companies in and have them share in the cost so that maybe we're not having to pay for 4 years of school for everyone, maybe it's just 2, and then we can cut the cost in half, right? Yeah. And then they get employees a little bit earlier, right? And because they're not paying them for those 2, right? But like they're training them and they're making them smarter. So it's like this give and take. So those are the 2 pillars. One is we have to figure out how to move more of it online. And 2, we have to figure out how to bring private industry into the game because we know how much they pay for recruiters, right? Like if you've ever been in the private sector, you know how expensive the recruiting is of employees. I think I'm invested in 70 startups right now, direct.
Oh my God.
And a handful of them I'm operational in. The ones I'm operational in, we are using recruiters right now and desperate to hire good people. We're paying like, it's crazy. We'll pay $30,000 to a recruiter to get an employee. I mean, so I think the more we can push companies to involve themselves earlier in the cycle and help them educate the next generation, and then hey, a little bonus for them. They get to kind of say, hey, you like the culture here? Like, hey, you're already here when you graduate, right? A certain percentage of those people might just stick around.
Yeah, and potentially, you would potentially even streamline the recruitment process because what you're really doing is or the companies at least have an opportunity to look and go, hey, these are the really hard workers right here. Let's get these right in the door versus maybe the slackers. You get to firsthand see that rather than try to guess that in like a 3-part tech interview for an hour each or whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And listen, by the way, I want to say I love that your 21 or 20-point program touched on everything. You touched on the really hard subjects. The ones that I've struggled with that I don't have answers to, like the homeless issue that you guys have out there, and it's been getting so much worse, right? And by the way, it's been getting a lot worse here in Texas and Austin too.
Really,
right?
You're seeing that there too.
Austin, it's gotten terrible the last few years, and actually they just voted to kind of clean up Austin a little bit in terms of that. But I don't think there's easy answers to that problem. No. The answers to that problem, especially with mentally unwell people, are complex. But I know it's solvable. Like I just know if we get, it's just a matter of someone standing up and saying, hey, we might need a lot of money and a lot of creative thought, but with the leadership that you have in California on the business side, someone needs to just say, hey, this is going to be a major initiative. It's a 10-year program. We're going to hire the smartest and the best people, and we're going to fund it privately or a hybrid between government and billionaires, right? But we're going to solve this human problem. And you just have to have an emphasis on let's do it together. Let's figure it out. Let's solve it. It's solvable. It's solvable. It's just not solvable in an easy way.
Yeah, it's fascinating you say this. One of the things that I thought of between the homeless issue is one issue. Then you've got the future schools idea. They actually almost relate because, in my opinion, you need people who do receive homeless support to have an opportunity to go to a future school and learn how to be an electrician. I mean, think about this. My estimate, and based on my research, 80% of the people who are homeless don't want to be homeless. They just don't have the education because the state screwed them with a miserable education where at 18 they can't do anything, or they had a job and it failed because of a crisis or whatever. But I believe 80% of people who are homeless could be taught within a few days how to change outlets. Just as one specific example, within a few days. That alone in California is a skill that pays $20 to $28 an hour to do that professionally and well under an electrician. That's way more than minimum wage. And that's just in a few days of teaching. You know what I mean? So I think this merger between potentially what you had mentioned with teaching, training people to become electricians in these future schools where they also learn about finance, but then also solving the homeless crisis, they're almost intertwined. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
It's just I agree with all of that. It's just not a problem that's fixed overnight. So I think
No.
there has to be a change in mindset in terms of, hey, we have some good ideas. We're gonna test more, right? And we're gonna figure this out over this period of time. But be patient with us. Like, we're gonna put smart minds behind it, and that's one great way to solve it. I don't know why it wouldn't work, quite honestly, but I don't know the things we don't know yet about that, right? So I think there just has to be a commitment to testing and funding these creative ideas, right? And just figuring out which ones work, which ones don't work, and moving forward with them instead of just trying to blanket throw money at a problem. No. It's not all about money.
It's not.
Listen, listen, you saw like the last decade how many people got behind kids, smart kids, trying to solve the climate crisis. Like, how many climate people do we have now? You can't tell me there aren't a lot of really smart young people that want to help solve these problems. And so it's just bringing them together and having, like anything else, you have to have leadership. It starts from the top, right? So Kevin, you're not going to have all the answers, but you can potentially serve as a great leader to inspire and bring in smart people and embolden them to think creatively and to test and find solutions over time, right? It's not an easy thing to do in a state government, obviously. But if you don't try, it's never going to happen, right?
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly. People need a path to dignity, right? And there are going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error for that, because it's not as simple as even just the example I just gave. It's so complicated, like you're saying. But when you hear that Los Angeles gets $1.1 billion in a 6-year bond to reduce homelessness, and they've housed maybe couple thousand people, if they're lucky, out of the 160,000 that are homeless. Give me $1.1 billion. I feel like I do a whole lot more damage than 2,000 people. Okay, like that. Yeah. It blows my mind the inefficiencies that exist. And so, for example, I mean, there is a lot of learning too. For example, there's a commenter here suggesting that I shouldn't be mislabeling homelessness as just an education issue. It's not just an education issue. Education is just part of the problem. The fact that we have a failure of the education system where you can't get a job at 18 because you don't have the skills to do it is a problem. Is a big problem. So many issues to solve. I want to ask you, Chris, though, what do you think about, rather than this push for universal basic income? This is something I thought about yesterday. I thought about, instead of UBI, what about UBH? And this is where, when you do become homeless, you have universal basic housing. So that way, rather than here's cash that you haven't been educated on how to use, because again, the system has failed us. Here's anybody who falls below a certain threshold, no problem. We've got a place for you to live. And every single day there's a bus. You know what? There are 10 buses that show up at that city or whatever, that town or whatever it is. And they'll take you to a future school, A, B, C, D, whichever one you want to get on. What do you think?
I mean, it's cool. Like, I think it's interesting. Like I said, I think it's something that should be tried. Like, I don't know that there's any bad ideas. The only way we figure problems out that are this big is to have smart people with bold ideas and to try them out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I thought one of your ideas that was really cool was the whole small claims. I wrote down here, the small claims council, right? Like, that was super cool. But I think it all starts by bringing in talent to government. And so, like, I'm trying to figure this out. In California, we have so many amazing private sector leaders, right? So many amazing companies, so many brilliant minds. What if, like, what if you, like, if I were governor of California, I would go with the CEOs and I'd say, listen, I need to figure out a way. You guys are getting all the good young people. You're getting
Mm.
all the good young people.
Yeah.
We need to incentivize some of the very best young
Mm.
people out of Stanford
Yeah.
to, let's call it, kind of like when you used to go into the military for a few years. Like, we need them to go into public service for a few years, right? And so, but they're only going to do that if it's something that benefits not just the world. We'd like to think that everyone thinks like that, but they don't. We need it to benefit themselves as well. So, like, we need you to come out and say, hey, you guys come out of school and you do this, whether it's right out of school or you take a 2-year break or a 4-year break from our company.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we support that, and it's something that's a net positive for your resume. It's something that we're going to try to hire people who have done this. It's kind of like being an Eagle Scout or something, right? Like
Right.
if you have put in X number of years to help out our state, right? If the best brains, right? That is something that we're going to get behind. I want to hear Tim Cook come out and say, you know what? We have X number of employees. We're going to support this program. If anyone here wants to take a few years off and go help our state because you think you have something to bring to the table, we'll support that, and we'll be there to hire you back. And hell,
Nice.
you're going to look a lot better to us when you come back than you do today. I mean, that's the creative sort of thinking. A lot of this is about perception. Remember, so you can have great. You have to have great people. You can't fix it all yourself, and so
No,
you have to have
that's-
really big thinking.
So this did you think that small claims thing is something that could be done? I mean, you're a business owner. The litigiousness is crazy, certainly in
Dude,
California.
it's totally nuts.
Mhm.
Listen, I like it. It's not necessarily that one idea is killer. I just like that you're coming up with ideas like that. It's a
Mhm.
bold idea. It might work. It might not. But
Yeah.
someone needs to take that on as a project and see, right? Like someone needs to flush it out. Run with it. Run, like,
Yep.
meet with judges, meet with like admin, meet with attorneys. Like, try to figure out where are the holes in this plan, right? Like, where am I? And that's where you need really smart people to maybe not become a DA and maybe take a few years off and do that instead, or not become a private attorney, or maybe someone that's in that system, take a few years off and put together a group of people, try to figure it out, test it first.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about immigration? Immigration's such a, I mean, California's had net losses now, people outflowing, but you do also have a big immigration issue. What's your thought on that?
Yes, this is an interesting one because I'm here in
Mhm.
Texas, and I think
Yeah.
Texas has like a reputation of being anti-immigration.
Mm.
And I'm always curious about that. I think it's misunderstood. I'm a business owner. I have a restaurant. We have a ton, I don't know, like 70 some odd employees at my restaurant.
Wow.
And the number one thing that we worry about all day, every day, now more than ever, is people. Like, we need workers. We need people. And I can tell you, a lot of our employees, are Hispanic. I don't know what we would do, quite honestly, without them. I literally don't know what we would do. Like, I think immigration, figuring this out in a way that everybody can agree on it, right? There's a way
Mhm.
to get this done. I think out of all the issues, immigration is the one issue that I think has the most miscommunication between the left and the right. I think it's the
Mhm.
one that's most solvable, right? I feel like if you really have a sit down with everyone but at the extreme edges of the parties,
Yeah.
and you're like, listen, like, what's a way we can solve this? I think most people would be really good having a lot more immigration. Yeah, maybe you have to do it in a different way, more of a controlled way, fine, but like we have to figure out a way not only to allow more immigration in the right way, but also, listen, like you said in your 20 points,
Yeah.
we need to provide pathways for people, right? Like, pathways. Like, I love that. Like, you go to the school, you know what I'm saying? You do your
Yeah,
new
yeah.
school, your new school, and by the end of it, you're in. Like, you're done. Like, we need that so badly. I would say there's never been a time like this when small business owners have looked around and been like, OMG, what on earth are we going to do? There's a restaurant I like to eat at. It's a wing place here in Dallas.
Mm.
And I've been going there like every 4 or 5 days for the past month and trying to get in. I'm like, there's almost nobody in the restaurant. And it's like a 45-minute wait. And I keep like, what's the deal,
No
guys?
staff, huh?
They were like, we just don't have enough staff. And so, like, my restaurant, not because of me, because my GM is that good. Like, we have such a good atmosphere with our employees. We treat them so well. I think that they're so great that we have really high retention rates, and we're better than most. But so many of the other restaurants here in town just can't get employees. I heard Taco Bells were like selectively closing some so that they can like redistribute the employees to ones that are more in more optimal areas.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
I think this is the time that we can all get together on the same page and say, hey, we need people. We need people. Let's figure out a way to get this done and get this done the right way, because I know this is a solvable problem that the right and the left can come together on and fix. And we can
Now,
get it.
how much of this has to do with the unemployment boost of $300 a week? I mean, that's effectively getting $7 an hour on a 40-hour work week for free. Plus state, you're at $8-9 an hour. Is that preventing people from working, or what happened?
So I'll tell you what, like we love to stick to these really like easy storylines for the press, right? Like, it's all because of this, all because of this. It's kind of like when a plane crashes. It's like 10 things happening at the same time. So what you just said with the unemployment, that's a piece of it. Yes, it's a piece of it. The other piece of it is we lost a lot of these employees over the past 10 months, meaning most of these restaurants were either completely shut down and just let everybody go, or they cut their staff by 20, 30, 40%. So what happens is people kind of get in a mode of doing something a little different. Maybe they have a side hustle they're doing now, right? Maybe they decide to just take some time off. Well, when we reopen the economy, it happened really quickly. At least like here in Texas, it happened. It was like boom. It was like, we're open. And by the way, my restaurant we're setting records every single week for the past 6 weeks. It's kind of insane. Setting records. Like, forget about matching 2019's numbers. We're busting right through them. And so the problem is that it was just too much too quickly. So like right now we're having issues getting chicken. Okay. And I had a talk with our supplier for chicken. I was like, what is going on with the chicken? And she's like, they just can't rehire quick enough the people that have to cut the chicken up. It's just, I was like, are we going to be okay? She's like, we'll be okay. It just takes time. It takes time to get people from all these other things they've been doing the last 8 months. Yeah, maybe the unemployment doesn't help, right? It doesn't help, but it's not the only thing. Even if we didn't have that, we would probably still have this issue and be maybe a little not as bad. I think we'll get through it, is all I'm saying. It's just going to take time.
No, that's fascinating. I mean, how does that tie into the inflation argument? I mean, you've got the Fed on one hand saying, yeah, we got supply constraints, so we're going to see those for the rest of the year, even into the beginning of 2022. That's going to lead prices to go up. But then you get J Powell, on the other part of the Fed going, yeah, we're going to see that, but don't worry, by next year, it'll all be back to normal, basically. How persistent do you see these inflationary pressures? And I mean, you've just described a perfect one.
Yeah, I would say I'm not the best when it comes to macro. Like, my whole life has been around, early identifying change at the micro level, right? Like, the macro thing is just bewildering to me, and it seems like no one ever really knows what they're doing. It's just all a big guess. I feel like my gut instinct right now is, we're gonna have some inflation issues. Like, like I'm feeling it. Like, I'm totally just feeling it as a small business owner. I'm really feeling it. I'm a little nervous about it, to be quite honest, but I'm not an economist, and it seems like every time we think we know what we're doing when we talk about inflation, it just never pans out that way. Like, I don't know why, it just never pans out the way we thought it would pan out a few months from now. So like, I'm not even going to try to guess how this all ends or how we deal with it in terms of all the money printing, and I don't know. And I try not to think about it too much, because I feel like, unlike my normal investing, where I have tremendous control over my decisions and how those things work out, I feel like this is one where I just have very little control over. It's just gonna happen.
One thing that you mentioned just a bit ago was that it can take time for companies to say, hey, we're going to cut costs, we're going to become more efficient. Almost every manufacturing earnings call talks about how, whether it's Nestle or Coca-Cola or whatever, Walmart, doesn't matter. They're all talking about how they want to digitize and become more efficient to try to offset these price increases. Is there a scenario? Can we go micro? I don't know if we can. Maybe we can't. is there a potential scenario where these businesses get hyper efficient by force because of these inflationary pressures? And then what if in the future these pressures go away and all of a sudden you have these companies that are just these well-greased machines that have become so efficient and they don't even need to be. Now it's just printing tendies.
Dude, you just nailed it. Like that is everything that I've been thinking about. So both in terms of like on the private side of the companies I'm invested in privately, all the way down to my own restaurant, by the way, to the public trading that I'm doing. That's the one thing I picked up on is, and I think it's really something that's underappreciated. The amount of efficiency and productivity that has come out of the last year is quite honestly mind-blowing, right? Mind-blowing. I was just talking about today with like Build-A-Bear. We did a Build-A-Bear episode on dumbmoney.tv today.
Oh, nice. I love it.
And it was like that company should have gone out of business last year. Their revenue was only down by like 25%. Like, I don't know how they did. Like, they have gotten so efficient, okay? Like, their e-com game is just killing it. Molson Coors.
E-commerce on Build-A-Bear?
Oh,
You're supposed
dude.
to go there and build it.
Dude, you got to watch my episode this morning. It is, I'm telling you, it is, Build-A-Bear has figured out how to... go e-com with these things. It's incredible. By the way, you know that you can order, if you have any young kids in your family, if you need to order a present day, you can order a Build-A-Bear, design it online. If it gets in by 11 a.m., they will have shipped in the local neighborhood, go pick it up from the store and deliver it same day. You can have a customized Build-A-Bear, same day, delivered anywhere in the country, not by shipping, but they're leveraging their in-store footprint, right? Sure. By the way, not to mention the fact that they renegotiated 90% of their leases. How insane is that over the last year? They've laid off, I mean, all these companies I'm invested in have done, strategic layoffs. Listen, back in the day, a lot of young investors don't realize this because they haven't seen cycles, but back in the day, we had these things called economic cycles. And if you haven't been through a few of them in terms of being on the ops side, like working at the companies, this is how they work. Every company gets fat. It's just the way of the world. I've been working at big companies, medium and small, my whole career. They get fat. We get lazy. You know what happens? The more successful you are, the lazier you get at a company. I don't care how big it is. You just get terribly fat. Then you have the economic cycle. It comes in, and one, you're like, we need to trim the fat. You don't have a choice. Two, you're forced to figure out where the fat is, and 12 months later, you basically cut a bunch of employees who are underperforming. Some of them might not have even been working half the time, right? You've gone through this process of trimming the fat, and those employees, a lot of them were never happy at that job to begin with. They find a new career for themselves. Like, all these things happen. It's the way of the world. It's like the way when the forest burns down, and it grows back. This is the way it's always been. It's so healthy. It's so healthy. Well, we don't do that anymore. And that, if you would have asked me like before the pandemic, Chris, what's your biggest concern? I wasn't sleeping at night because we don't go through economic cycles. Like, that's the thing that kept me up. I was like, dude, this is not normal. Like, I don't feel good. This is a very bad feeling. Like, this is not going to end well. You can't just have companies getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter without bringing in the productivity and the efficiency. Well, the pandemic happened. Terrible event, obviously. But it kind of forced us. In our own way, it forced us to go through a cycle of productivity, trimming fat, learning, figuring out, right-sizing your company, digitizing your company, right? E-com, like all this amazing stuff. I have never been so excited for enterprise, ever, in my entire life, because I'm seeing, like, I'm the guy that actually, I always say, like, listen to the conference calls. I probably read 100 earnings transcripts a month. Okay,
Good.
Like you have to do that. And if you actually read this stuff, you're like, what, dude? What is happening the last 6 months, 6 to 8 months, is incredible in terms of companies becoming more productive, efficient, smart. That's what saves us. That is what gets us out of this. There's always something that gets us out of it, and that's what it is this time around. Like, and I really feel confident of that.
I mean, it's huge. I mean, margin improvement, even though it might take another year to show up, or even potentially a little longer, that will make these already profitable companies substantially more profitable, or potentially unprofitable companies very profitable. And this is something, I mean, really, something that you hit on, which I want to ask what happens to these people, but I want to talk about essentially, let's say you're a company, you're Apple or whatever. You got, I don't know, 100,000 workers. I'm just making up a number. I don't know how many they have. And you lay off 30% of them. You're only going to hire back the best ones. Like you said, the ones who weren't happy there, the ones who weren't performing, they're not getting the phone call back. They now got to retool and get new skills to get hired. Maybe this means, well, crap, now I got to go back into studying to learn how to do a job interview. But then they brush up their skills in doing that. Maybe that just takes time. I don't know. What do you think? Is this something that maybe it just takes a few years? Maybe this recent stock sell-off we have been having here with this inflation fears and all this, maybe this is just a hiccup. It's not like a start of a recession. It's just part of the process. What's your thought?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think it does take time. And I think, the concern and the unknown is all part of it. But I do love a lot of what's happened the last year at the enterprise level. And I do also, I'm a little bit of an optimist, but I do firmly believe I've had to lay off a lot of people, over my career. And almost in every situation, I truly believe that if I was laying them off for cause or for underperformance, that it would benefit them in the long term. And I follow a lot of these employees that, I've had to let go over the years. And in so many of those cases, they are way better off when they found their new career, their new skill, right? They should have never been in sales to begin with, right? They should have never have been in this industry sector. They ended up getting a different type of education. Like these things have a way of working out. It's like I said, it's the natural way of things. And if you don't have a situation that forces this, inefficiency is a terrible thing for companies and industry sectors because you don't realize how inefficient you are, right? Until something really bad happens because boy, like sometimes the worst thing for a company is hyper success because hyper success, everyone just like, yeah, it's all great. We're the best. Like hire. Like it's something I think about a lot as a guy that I've been on the operational side most of my career. So like now that I'm on the investment side, it's something that I'm always thinking about.
Wow. What are you seeing in valuations between private and public markets right now?
Gosh, they're both up, right? So yeah, they're both up. I will say this, I've made a lot of private I'm starting to make a lot of more private investments now. Because there has been so much creative thinking and innovation. And I have these conversations with my VC friends every day now. And like, I'm on the phone with them and I'm like, don't pitch me another deal. Just don't do it. I'm overextended. I don't want to hear it. And they're like, Chris, you don't understand. Like, I'm like, dude, I can't do it. They're like, dude, we need to raise a bigger fund because I'm telling you, every one of these deals is quality. Like there are so many quality deals, like really interesting people that are doing really well thought out ventures that are early stage, mid stage, and they're killing it because they've had the last year to kind of do a lot of thinking and strategizing and people, it's kind of like, remember after 2008, like we had a huge wave of entrepreneurship, right? And all these new companies came out. Like we're right in the middle of that right now. And if you're not in this kind of VC world that I live in half the time, you kind of don't see it, but get ready because we have some big ones coming, right? Like there's a lot of really interesting companies that are coming down the pipe right now. And these are game changers for the next decade, right?
Yeah. Jeez, I mean that's incredible. What about? I think you posted something about completely getting out of margin maybe about a month ago. Is that true?
I did. I went all the way down to 20% margin, I think, which from like 100%.
So basically zero.
Yeah,
for you.
and then I crept back up to, I think I'm somewhere between. I hate admitting this, but somewhere between 55 and 60% leverage again. But
Aren't
my
you nervous,
leverage,
man?
well, no, my leverage this time has come from my conviction in just a handful of things I have a lot of conviction for. Like, if you watch my channel, like, yeah, I'm really have a lot of conviction in Molson Coors. It's the biggest trade of my lifetime. I have a lot of conviction. I have, less conviction, but I'm super excited about Funko and their NFT launch. Even the Build-A-Bear thing we went over today. Like, I have a handful of things that I have conviction in. outside of the market movement, right? Like I can't, you never know what's going to happen with the market. And that's my biggest concern is we get a huge market pullback, which certainly could happen for any number of reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Inflation, like, interest rates, like there's 100 reasons for this market to crack. That's something I'm
Yes.
going to have to live with, right? Like I have to live with that. That's just part, but I'm fortunate. Look, I bucket my money, right? Like I have risk capital and I have capital. It's not risk capital. So,
Yeah.
you know
Like
what I do
Amazon.
with yeah. You know what I do with my risk capital? I take risk with it, right? Like that's what I do. And so that's okay. It's okay.
Good point. What about? Well said. Did you? I'm sure you probably heard this. I read today on Bloomberg that eBay is getting into the NFT game. Okay, what kind of impact is this going to have on Funko? Does eBay have a shot? I mean, they're up from pandemic, even pre-pandemic levels, but they had nowhere near the growth that the Etsy's, the Amazons had, the Apple, and so on, Pinterest even. Is this what they need?
I think they have a window. I'm not going to say that they will be successful or not, but I think they have a window because, one thing that I have not liked about the NFT space, and I'm kind of knee deep in it, and just for a lot of reasons, is that they haven't made it as approachable as they could have for the masses.
Yes.
So, I think eBay has a window. Now, will eBay execute on that window? I have no idea. But there certainly is an opportunity for someone to come in and say, you know what does eBay have that some of the other platforms don't have? They have eyeballs and scale, right? So could they pull it off? They could. I'll tell you this. So I love as a social arb investor, here's what I love. This becomes something that I watch very closely.
Oh, yeah.
And my goal is now to be the first person in the world that figures out if eBay is successful at this or not, right? Like let's
So
watch.
this is on your radar.
Yeah, so it's on my radar now. So I'll be watching it very carefully. And before the first story ever gets printed that it was a massive success, before the first analyst comes out and says, oh, this is a massive failure or massive success, I'll know, or I'll have my own opinion, and I'll trade accordingly on it. So like I don't have the answer, but I'm watching it now.
Oh yeah. No, that's incredible. Now, eBay, you mentioned they got the eyeballs. In some sense, they also have the name recognition. I mean, people know eBay. One thing that I realized is I didn't know about Rarible. I didn't understand this. Okay, plug in your MetaMask, and it's got to be on Google Chrome, and then you gotta pay like multiple different times to certify transactions. These gas fees, it's complicated the first time you go through it. I think if eBay can come around and make that simple, like one-click Amazon, that's got a shot.
The window is there. I agree with you. Like I forced myself to get in that world. I have MetaMask, right? And I buy some of these tiny, NFT projects. Why do I do it? Yeah, I force myself to do it because I can't critique it or understand it. Listen, and here's the big thing. I say this all the time. So much of our talent is going into this space. NFTs, crypto, blockchain, so much of our young talent. And so I need to be connected with that world, that talent. So I'm the old man in the room, great. I'm going to force myself to understand backwards and forwards, and the only way to understand is to do it. So yeah, I'm in there. I'm texting my crypto advisors, what am I doing wrong? I got to figure this out. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. But now I kind of understand it. I'm not the best at it, but I get it. I'm doing it. And I'll tell you this, most people are not going to do this stuff. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to get the MetaMask. They're not going to do any of that stuff. And so there's an opportunity for someone. Can it be eBay? Maybe.
It's interesting. I mean, really, I feel like everybody who has some crypto, it almost comes across like, oh, they're all crypto experts. Everybody wants to feel like they know everything. But I'll tell you, the more I learn about crypto, the more I tell my audience I am freaking clueless. Every day I'm like, really? You could do that too? And it just makes me stay hungry about learning more because there's so much. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was on, and people laugh when they watch Dumb Money. They're like, "Oh, you guys are always fighting and debating." And like, you don't get it.
Yeah.
This goes on every day behind the scenes too. Like
Sure.
yesterday, I'm on a call with Jordan for 2 hours, one of my Dumb Money partners, and for 2 hours, we're debating just high level, just crypto in general, and like we're going back and
Because
forth
Jordan
and
doesn't
back
like
and forth. He doesn't like it, but do you know what happened? Guess who opened up a Coinbase account last night?
Not
Jordan
Jordan.
did. Jordan did. He hasn't
No.
announced it, but he did it. He hasn't funded it.
What?
He hasn't funded it. But I said, Jordan, I'm like, I can. I'm like, it's not. He doesn't believe in it any more than he did yesterday, right? But he understands now that he has to get himself in the center of the world so he can have a better understanding of why or why not.
Okay,
And so and I said, Jordan, I don't care if you put $50 in, $100 in. Just I want you to like engage. I want you to engage with it. So 10, 15 years from now, you don't look back if we miss something and be like, well, I would have seen it if I would have done that, right? Like you just have to do it.
Yeah. Getting in there and trying it. I mean, that's incredible. So you didn't convince him to go all in on crypto, but
I
you
know
got
I
him.
can't convince myself to go all in on crypto. Like I have the biggest crypto like FOMO account ever. Like the entire account is just a big FOMO account, so I could like read the the news every day and not like get pissed off that I'm not part of something. Like I bought, that's what but I also, you know what? Honestly, part of me believes in it. Like I'm not all in, but part of me does believe in it. I'm still figuring it out. And I think about it every day. For years, I've been thinking about crypto every day. I'm not there, but I'm still on the fence. Let's put it that way. I'm not like a crypto bull or bear. I'm on the fence.
What's like a reasonable percentage of your portfolio that you think you can have, exposed?
For me, it's 5 to 10%.
Okay.
And that might sound like a lot to someone, but
That's good.
When I think about how big of a percentage of the intelligent conversation that's going around is revolving around crypto, blockchain, NFTs, when I think about influential people and kids and the next generation, how big of a deal it is. Like for me, it's no longer a half of 1% to 1% thing. It's a 5 to 10% thing. And listen, I am willing to lose it all. I'm willing to have it, all gone because it's that big of a part of the fabric of our society now, and it's global. That's the other thing, right? Like, I told Jordan, like he's like, oh, it's a big pyramid. The whole thing's a big pyramid scheme, right, to him? So I was like, okay, let's just say you're right. Let's just say you're right. And at some point, people will start to figure it out if you're right. We've never seen a pyramid scheme that crosses every country in the world that is approachable to every demographic, meaning it's not a skincare pyramid scheme, right? It's not just a green juice pyramid scheme. This is a pyramid scheme that everybody in the world could participate in. So even if you're right, Jordan, and it's all a big pyramid scheme, the size of the pyramid scheme being global and being 4-quadrant, every age, every sex, every type of person can understand and relate to it, and either everybody gets fooled, and we have institutions that are buying into it now, and everyone, like, it's a pyramid scheme I might want to be part of for a while. Is all I'm saying. But like that's all I'm saying is like we might not figure out the answer to that for a decade or more. Is all I'm saying. So like in the interim, until I could figure out the answer, I need to hedge, right? I need to hedge
By being
being in it. That's it.
Now, what are you seeing in the hedgy world? Because I'm hearing a lot of institutional experts leaving traditional banking and going to crypto, and a lot are going over to do price arbitrage options and derivatives. Part of me wonders how much exposure are we going to have to leverage crisis potentially with maybe more opaque financial instruments that don't have as much transparency.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what's an interesting kind of insider's perspective of that? Like back when the first crypto run happened, what was that 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Like ending in 17-ish, yeah.
Yeah, what was really interesting was that, if you work in the financial industry, as some people don't understand this, you can't trade. Right? Like you're in the industry, but you can't trade. And most people in the industry aren't portfolio managers, but they're in it every day. And so what was happening was so many people in the industry, like a lot, maybe most, were trading crypto back then because it was the only thing that they could legally trade. Because if they got caught doing it, there was nothing wrong with it. They weren't trading a security; they were trading crypto. So like there were like all these like there was all these like text groups and like I forgot the app back then. Like what's the app that you can't just everything disappears when you're texting? But like everyone was in those groups on Wall Street.
Snapchat.
Not Snap. The
No.
other one. Shoot. But anyway, everyone was like texting like their crypto knowledge and trades and information. So I think that's happening again. So what you really have are all these people throughout the financial industry that on the side they're super into this world because they can actually trade it for their own accounts, their own portfolios, right? And so what's happening is there's like a knowledge base and there's like this comfort level of all of Wall Street is getting trained in this on the side. It's like the side hustle for everyone that works on Wall Street. And so what repercussions does that have?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But like, it's not like Wall Street is blind to the crypto stuff. Believe me, if you're young, especially, like if you're a 20-something or 30-something-year-old person working in the financial industry, like you're at a hedge fund, you're at a sell, like you're trading crypto on your app all day. That's what you're actually doing.
I love that. I think that's really neat. I want to, for a moment, go back to a little bit political. I want to know your thoughts on minimum wage. Because and part of time I think about. I kind of got to this because I think of so many people who invest. They're only $2,000 or $3,000, and they go, "That's it. I'm going all in on this coin." And so it just brought up this idea of minimum wage, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay. What do you mean? Like, what should the minimum wage be? Is it high enough?
Should there be a minimum? Should it be 15? And should it be based on value? Is it an education first? You could go in so many different.
Yeah. So it's something that I thought about a lot, and it's like one of these things where there's not a perfect answer. I think we all kind of agree, like. It would be nice if it were bigger, right, for everyone. If the minimum wage were a little bigger, it'd be nice. The issue is, and not everyone sees this, that the higher the minimum wage gets, the higher the incentive to kind of replace the employee, right, with automation. Now, is that even a bad thing? So you could even make a case that, you know what, if the world is we're always on this cycle going up the pyramid, right? And we have to stay on top. We have to continue improving ourselves and re-educating ourselves. That it might not be a terrible thing to raise the minimum wage, increase the incentive for companies to get rid of those employees. We have to have a stopgap place for those employees to fit in our society. A retraining, a new school, right? And then they learn better jobs over time. Now, none of this happens quickly, right? But like, it's a cycle of, yes, people earn more, companies are incentivized to have less people, to replace it with automation, and then those people that get left out get retrained. It's more about us having a stopgap measure to then what do we do with those people? We can't just say, oh, too bad for you, right? Like, we all benefit from automation, right? We all benefit from productivity and efficiency. So if we can wrap our head around the idea that we benefit from that, then let's also have a plan for the people that get the raw end of the stick to say, okay, cool. You know what? We also benefit from making sure those people are retrained and utilized in whatever their next profession happens to be. But it's a dirty process. Like there's a lot. You really have. I'm a long-term thinker, right? Like I always play the long game in everything that I do. It's always the long game. But I think politics can be short-sighted, right? I mean, people have to get elected every so many years, and we're focused on the short game. So I don't think that like higher wages are like. It's not that it's a good or bad thing. It's just a thing that has stuff that comes with it. And so we have to understand all that stuff. And really, Kevin, what's most important is that like companies are doing this on their own, right? Like we've seen over the past 5 years, they are raising wages on their own. We've seen it with Amazon, right? So many of them. And then when you have that many companies raising wages, it just naturally, people migrate to those higher wages. And then if you don't pay higher wages, you kind of get worse employees, and then you do worse, and those companies go away. The ones that are paying better wages get better people. It's part of the natural cycle of life, right? So it all kind of takes care of itself. So I don't focus too much on it because it just naturally takes care of itself. I think if we raise wages, don't raise wages,
Doesn't
I
matter.
don't think it will make that big of a difference at the end of the day. I don't think it's like the marquee problem that I would like focus on that much.
So that, I mean, that's really interesting because, and I made a little note here because most people, they go, oh, minimum wage is good because it's unfair that people work 40 hours and can't survive. But then you get the counter, well, those workers are going to get replaced. But then the argument usually stops. You don't really hear about this argument that you just made, which is the new equilibrium. Okay, but the benefit is then people go out and get retrained and then they go to those jobs and then they get paid more. That was brilliant.
But we have to, as a society, we have to acknowledge it, that there is a life cycle, and we have to be there for the other end of the life cycle, right? Like, listen, Amazon, have you, by the way, have you ever, right before the pandemic hit, me and my wife did like a day date, and it was so cool. Like, it's going to sound so nerdy. Amazon just started letting people visit their distribution facilities, and you could take like a 2-hour tour of their distribution facility. And we did it, the one in Dallas. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
How'd you get into that? I want to do that.
You just, at the time, well, the pandemic hit and they halted it, so I don't know when they're going to restart it again. But you literally just go on Amazon's website, you just type in, you apply for it, and they're like, okay, the next opening slot for your local distribution facility is next Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon. And you go and they put a hard hat on, you go in a classroom, and then they literally tour you through what is like going into the future. That's how these robots that are like, there's no way to explain how wild their tech is. But what I'm getting at is Amazon benefits so much from the AI. Over the next 20 years, there's no doubt in my mind, Amazon's going to be laying off a lot of those employees to automation. Okay, great, Amazon, you benefit. But you know what? Help us on the other end. Help us on the other end, right? Make a contribution to get these people, retrained. And by the way, they're already doing a lot of that, so I don't want to rip on them. But we just have to have the full life cycle in our budget plans. That's all I'm saying. You can't make a decision just on minimum wage. It all works together. So like, let's make a decision on minimum wage and let's figure out what that's going to do to employees long term. Let's figure out how to get them retrained and supported if they fall out of the system. Like, let's be comprehensive about it. And by the way, that could be a 10-year plan. Oh, I also love, what do you call it here? Is at the end of your video, you called it a transition bond. Okay. So a transition bond. I love that you're even thinking about this stuff, because what I'm thinking about when I hear transition bond is I'm thinking it's something that it's like something that you do for America, right? Like as an investor, like you go to people like Tim Cook, you go and you're like, listen, we need to raise $100 billion transition, whatever the number is for California. And you guys are going to give us the money. It's going to be a pretty decent rate. It's what we need. It's what we need. And you go to them and you're like, this is how you help. And by the way, you make money. You make a little bit better than you would have off some other random bond. But you're going to invest in California through this transition bond. You got to get everybody, like, you'd be shocked what leadership can do. That's all I'm going to say. It's the one thing I learned in my life. Yeah. Leadership can do amazing things. And so, like, that's why I respect that you're even considering doing what you're thinking about doing, because although it will probably ruin your life, it will probably ruin your life. If we don't have people who are capable and creative and willing to do that stuff, then we're dead, man. If we don't have a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington step up at some point in the near future, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat or something in between. I really don't care. Like, if we don't have good people stepping up to do this stuff, we're dead. It's all about leadership. And like, I think if you're the right leader, you can get everybody on board. You can get the corporate leaders on board. Like, I don't know if you remember when Trump first came into office, like, forget about politics for a second. Yeah. I know for a fact that there were some amazing people that did not like Trump that initially got on his, team and bandwagon. Now they all left like a year later, right? But like, like I know initially, like, it just goes to show, if you ask, you'd be shocked what people will do for you as a leader. So, I hope you move forward with it. I think it'd be fun to watch, and you definitely have my support, man. For sure. I'll be deep behind the scenes, helping in any way that I can if it happens.
Well, thank you for that. What kept you out of politics? What's this ruined life part? What's this warning I got to know about?
Man, I I have these really ambitious goals of like fixing the wealth gap and saving
Yeah,
the
yeah.
world. Like since I was a little kid, like these really ambitious goals. And I thought when I was a kid I could do them through politics. But like
Mm,
the reason why I got into investing, because like I'm such a control freak, like in the corporate world, you know, I was a bit to deal with in the corporate world, right? I've been demoted, when early on in my career, I have big ideas, like, and like, so I didn't like how I didn't have, like, I can do everything, I can do my best, I could be
mm,
great, if one person didn't think I was great, it didn't matter, right? Like,
yeah.
what I love about what I do now is I have full control. I make an investment, I do 60 hours of research, there are always risks that are outside of my control, but for the most part, if I kill it, I'm going to kill it, right? And if I don't, it's my fault, right? And I
On you.
love that
Yeah.
accountability. I felt like politics for me is something that there are way too many other factors come into play. There's way too like, oh, it's so and so, or I just don't, there's just too many other things that are in control of my destiny. And
Mm.
so I'm more about being one of the many people behind the man, whoever that man ends up being. I've always said I would love to find someone that had bold ideas, like a Mr. Smith type of guy who I can support. I've never really found that person in politics, and I've been disillusioned by politics in general over most of my life.
Yeah.
And listen, I consider myself a real pragmatic centrist, right? And like
Yeah.
I'm apolitical in that way. I just like solving problems and supporting people that are trying to do the right thing. So like I'll never be
Yeah.
the front man in a political campaign. That I will assure you of. But anyone that tries to do something great, I'll support.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. I want to wrap up by asking you about the last 2.5 months. The last 2.5 months has been a market of shorting and hedging, and the hedgies who had been losing their pants during the massive rally really printing tendies the last 2.5 months. ARC's getting slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
The largest outflows they've had over the last year have been in the last 2 months, 2.5 months. What's the short term look like to you?
Well, I don't know. If you're talking about the market as a whole, I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm kind of nervous because it can go either way,
You're
right?
nervous at 50% margin.
Yeah, I'm nervous for 50% margin because there are things out of my control that will
Yeah.
impact my investments, even if I'm right about my investments. Like, even if
Mm,
I'm right, there are things that will impact them. But I do feel this way, and I think this is a big learning time for everyone that's
mhm.
gotten into the market the last year, year and a half. Other people have said this. It's been easy. Okay, it's generally been easy to be a winner in 2020 and even parts of
Yep.
2021. It's harder now.
Yep.
And I kind of like that it's harder. Like I've been waiting for this. Like I I'm not a person back in 2000, I was in the middle of the dot-com boom. I was living in LA, right? That was a time that I had a lot of anxiety. Nothing made sense to me. I didn't like it because your hard
Mhm.
work didn't really matter. Like
No.
it was
Yeah.
like you do a bunch of hard work and then this company is just a nothing, just it's I don't like that. I don't like a lot of the things that I saw this last year. It didn't feel right to me. I didn't feel like, listen, I
Oh,
had the
there we go.
best year of my career, but I feel like now is where you start to separate people that are really willing to put in the work, the strategies that actually
Mm,
work from the ones that don't. Um, and I like that. I like that now all these people that came in the market, the 15 million new Robinhooders,
oh
I
yeah.
hope most of them will stick around and move beyond the meme stocks, right? Will stick
Mm,
around and develop methodologies and strategies. Listen, it doesn't have to be what I do, social R, but it can. Um, I've been, actively trading the social arb thing for over 15 years, and it's been tremendous for me. I've had, average about 80% annualized returns now for 15
mhm,
years. Uh, and I think it's time for everybody to get a little smarter. I think it's
mm.
time for everyone who's in the market. We've learned our lessons to figure, okay, it's not just going to be meme stocks. It's not just going to be all
Yeah.
in the market, right? Just YOLO it all. Like that's fun to say that stuff, and I do a little bit of it every once in a while. But it's time to grow up a little bit. Like we're all there together. It was fun. Now it's time to grow up. Grow up, or kind of like lose everything you have. I don't know. So
I like
I have
that.
faith.
Yeah.
I have faith in. Listen, there's never a bad time to start a good company. There's also rarely a bad time to invest in a good company on a public exchange. And I feel there are opportunities that even if the market turns sour, I'm going to do way better than just having my money blanket YOLOing in growth stocks, right? Or
Sure,
whatever it
sure.
happens to be. I have a handful of stocks I have high conviction in, and my best scenario is a flat market. That's always the way it's been. Just give me a flat market, a market that grows a little bit, 2-3% a year. I don't
Sure.
care.
Consistent.
Just give me a flat. Let me trade information. Let me find alpha where the market doesn't impact my stock picks, right?
Right.
That's
because
my
right
dream.
now you could be right on a high conviction, because I know you're in Peloton. I know you hedged that recent fall, but you could be right on your long-term vision for a company like that. But be wrong in for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years, just because of, oh, that's it. High growth companies selling off.
Yes.
Oh, COVID's ending,
Yes.
sell that off. Like all the other rationale. The fundamental analysis just goes out the window with the moods of the market.
I hate it so much. I hate it so much. I want to get back to a normal market where the stocks that go up, they went up because something tremendous was found out about them, right? Well,
now you get tremendous and down.
Yeah, it's same thing. It's like I want that to move stocks on a stock by stock basis. That is a market that I will always win in. So listen, I feel like we're maybe getting closer to that than we were a few months ago. It's not going to be we're not going to go from 2020 to normal. We're going to have a roller coaster of weirdness, and we're trying to figure it out. We're overcorrecting on one side, then the other side. Now we're all nervous. I've never lost money before. What's happening? Oh my God, I didn't know margin meant I could lose half my portfolio in a day. Like, we have to learn, all the kids have to learn those lessons. Okay? They're all going to learn them. They're all going to learn. I learned it when I was in my 20s. I lost my money. Hey, there's no better lesson that you will ever learn than losing some money. You will come out smarter and wiser. You know what? If you're 20-something, you have 50 more years of investing in front of you. If you're going to lose now. Lose now. Don't lose later.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems like, in some sense, some of this, the meme or momentum investing has led to a lot of wins for many people, certainly losses for many others. But I worry sometimes that the ones that are winning are just going and doubling down on the next momentum thing. And it's just, it makes me nervous.
It makes me super nervous too. And that's why I'm always out there trying to talk a little bit of, not pushing too much, because then you get the whole boomer thing at you. But like, it's like just nudging, just like politely nudging. Hey, like, it doesn't have to be all YOLO crypto and NFT. Like, I'm in some of that stuff, guys, but how about this, very sensible social arb trade? I mean, I see this thing that no one else sees in this company that everyone's going to see in a few months. And, I like the odds of that.
I like that. Very last question. Robinhood, is it going to survive this? I mean, every time it seems like there's a momentum trade, Robinhood's got to do some shutting down,
Oh man, I think Robinhood is thriving right now. I mean, full transparency, I'm obviously I'm an owner in Robinhood and have been for a few years. And listen, I've been with the ups and downs on my show. They made me pull my Robinhood shirt off one day back when the scandal. But listen. Man, love them or hate them, dude, I think they're going to more than survive. I think they've been the #1 app in the world for weeks. #1 app in the world. Not in finance, in the world for weeks on iOS. Like, I can't even imagine how well they're doing right now. Like, I have, 40-some-odd-year-old dads in my neighborhood who are real estate guys who never had a brokerage account, opening up Robinhood accounts so that they could trade Doge, listen, if that's what gets them to open up a Robinhood account, they're not going to stop after Doge. Now they haven't, dude, this is so easy. Why do my money manager's been doing this for years. I'm going to start doing this with a piece of my money too. That's how we get new people in the market. Robinhood, I think, is going to kill it. I think they're going to kill it this year. And they're doubling down on crypto. I don't know, man. I think they're going to kill it. I really do. I think the IPO is going to be big.
I agree with you on that so much that I actually let's see if I can find it here. This was I cut it off a little bit. I wish I hadn't, but this was the thumbnail picture I had used off you.
Oh no, that's the one that will get me murdered.
The good news is I did cut off the logo for you.
I have not put the shirt back on since that day that my community made me pull it off. I'm gonna let everything settle. I'm gonna make sure that everybody's 100% good with Robinhood before it's between me and you, probably IPO day. I'm gonna test the waters on IPO day, and I'll put that shirt. It's right up there. I'm waiting.
Are you going to sell on IPO day?
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know.
And
I
can
don't
you?
know.
Because don't you have to get your shares transferred
Oh
to your
yeah, I'm
broker?
sorry. I can't sell for 6 months. No, so I
Oh,
won't be.
okay.
I won't be selling on IPO. More than likely 6 months, unless they Coinbase it, where it's like everyone was allowed to sell on day one of Coinbase. You know,
I think
so
that tanked Coinbase, honestly. I think that's what hurt.
it
bad.
did. And listen. I had a huge Coinbase position. I was so amped that night for Coinbase, and I gotta say it was a huge letdown. I mean, I made 2.5x on my Coinbase. I bought a few months earlier on the private market, but I was expecting like a 4 to 5x.
Yeah.
So, but it was. I still kept some of it. I still have some of my Coinbase.
Nice.
Robinhood's gonna be a big one, man. Watch it. I mean, who knows? Between now and then, like 2 months is like 5 years in Robinhood time. That company could come out and have the biggest scandal you've ever seen on Wall Street.
True. What I'm looking forward to is I want to see the numbers. I want to see the profit. I have a feeling these people are printing money more than Coinbase is printing money.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see, because that's what everybody's really going to care about.
Yeah, I think they're doing pretty well. I think they're doing pretty well on the profit side, but more than that, even on the account growth. Like right now, this month, I think they're crushing those numbers. I don't have inside information. I just think they're crushing the account growth numbers right now.
Amazing. Gosh, this was amazing, man. Anything else that you want to add? You know, shout out Dumb Money. You know, what anything else you want to add, man? This has been like I took notes during. This was great.
No, that's it. Listen, like dumbmoney.tv, you know, I had an article that everyone wants to know what social arb investing is, and it's so hard to explain, but there was an article that came out today on leoedit.com, leoedit.com. I actually texted it to you.
Yes.
It's an article on how to make dumb money. It's on me and social arb trading. And if you go to leoedit.com, it is honestly like, I might never do another interview again for the press, because like that's how good of a job they did just explaining what social arb investing is. If you want to read all about it, highly recommend going to Leo Edit and, you know, go to their Instagram and read it and let them know you like it. You know, my whole movement is, let's try to get finance out of finance, right? Let's try to get money talk out of the business press. Leo Edit is a magazine for like men's fashion out of LA, Hollywood. And it's so cool that they reached out and wanted to do an article about money and investing, like for their audience. I thought that was super cool. And that's what I love about everything that you're doing and so many other creators are doing. We're bridging this topic well outside of the traditional money, money space. So yeah, man, that's
so
all
important.
me. Yeah, at Chris Camillo on Twitter is where I hang out mostly. And that's it.
I'm going to link that article in the description as well. Chris, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much. Stand by for a moment. Everybody, if you found this helpful, make sure to share the video. Go check out Dumb Money TV, Chris Camillo on Twitter. And folks, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for being here.